I think maybe it's time to start. I'm showing you my camera just to show you that I'm a real person, not just a face on a poster. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming to join us this afternoon. We're starting a new series of 3 professional learning engagements talking about essentially fostering a growth mindset. So in this session, we're going to talk a lot about what it actually is. In part 2 of the series, we're going to look at activities that we can use to develop a growth mindset for teaching and learning. And then in the last session, we're going to look at the idea of growth mindset in relation to leadership. And I'm not talking about just being the dean. I'm talking about leadership in your own environment and taking control of those kinds of decisions. So a shift of focus from title to purpose. And that's a growth mindset perspective. So without really further ado, let's start on part 1, which is definitions of growth mindset, who thinks what about it, and how it impacts us in our daily life and in the work that we do. I'm going to drop the camera now because I'm very worried about the Wits bandwidth. So you do know I'm a real person sitting behind a real screen. And that's important because I'd really like you to participate, especially when I ask you for kinds of responses. It would be good if we did get some examples of the things that we're going to do. So Christine, you can stop sharing your screen so that I can share my screen. And I'm going to, I think, share it from a window because it will make life a little bit easier. Oh no. How does that happen? That's where we want to start from. Okay. So I'm going to drop you guys out, and then when I ask you for discussion in the chat, I'm going to see if I can get the chat to work. So the first thing I need feedback on, Christine, is can you see my screen?
Yes.
I'm happy to hear that. I did have somebody in a meeting this morning who kept saying, there is a red line around my screen, and I couldn't see it. So good reason for checking. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Christine.
There's no red line.
No, for me, there's a red line. Okay. Okay. So the place that I really want to start this afternoon is not about whether you have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset, but how do you even know? And you won't know unless you stop and you take stock of what's happening and you make a decision about what sort of mindsets the event is occurring in. So I wanted to start with John Kabat-Zinn, who is one of my all-time favorites. He is the man in charge of the mindfulness-based health programs that has published really the most influential medical work on mindfulness meditation. And he really deals in his clinic with people who've reached the end of the rope with pain and with chronic illness, and the discussion of how you can use mindfulness meditation in medical practice. But that's not my purpose this afternoon. Just to give us his definition of what mindfulness actually is. He says it's awareness. So being aware. Awareness that arises through paying attention. So that's stopping and checking. Paying attention on purpose. So not just by the by. In the present moment, which is what are we doing right now? And then the very last and most difficult one, non-judgmentally. So being aware of what's happening right now intentionally and not making a judgment on it, which is quite a hard thing to do. So join me in the chat and just leave a comment. Have any of you practiced mindfulness meditation? Have you ever tried to put this definition to the test? Developed some awareness of what's going on? I'm happy for you to give me a yes or a no or an all the time in the chat. Okay, Jennifer, that's a hard no.
Well, it's the only way it came out.
Oh, okay. Craig, have you done this formally or as in a course or through your reading? What was your exposure to it?
So it's something I've been learning through my own reading on my own and through listening to podcasts on guided meditation through mindfulness practice.
There's some fantastic podcasts that John Kabat-Zinn has done. Very interesting to listen to him. But maybe you'll agree with me when I say that the practice of mindfulness meditation, or even the concept of mindfulness awareness, is extremely difficult. We think we're doing it, and there's all this, yes, focus your awareness on your breath because that's something that all of us have, or, focus your awareness on the sunlight on your eyelids, that kind of thing. But actually, to keep aware continuously through moments is a really difficult thing, and it's a muscle. It requires practice. And so it's not a simple thing to say before you can think about a growth mindset or a fixed mindset, you actually have to be aware, because the majority of us are not aware in our interactions what's actually happening and why. We're just reacting rather than planning. And the classic discussion is that between every situation and your response to that situation, there is a space. And mindfulness is something that can make that space more apparent to you. So you don't have to have a knee-jerk reaction to a specific situation. You do have a time to craft your response because there's a space between the situation and the response. Is this sounding too airy-fairy and touchy-feely? It is, however, a reality of how we work. So if we look at the concept of mindsets, and there'll be lots of numbers this afternoon. So mindfulness is number one. An approach to mindsets, I thought an easy acronym for all of you is CPR, and not the kind of CPR that you think I'm talking about. So if we look at the space between the situation and the response, these three things can influence what happens between those two. So these are three things you find in the space. The very first one is C, which is the willingness to change. So if you have an awareness that you would like to change or you would like to change your responses, if the mindfulness leads you to the idea that you should perhaps think about your responses, then change is an imperative. Often change comes about as a result of a crisis. Something's not gone the way we want it to go, and we think, why is that? And so the stimulus to change could be from anything, but things that drag our awareness particularly are stimuli to change. So openness to change is something to think about when you think about mindsets. The P in this approach is purpose. If you're doing something for a purpose, then you're much more likely to give it your energy and effort than if you are doing something that you don't have a definite purpose for. And the classic for us in terms of being educators of students is if students are learning their work for the purpose of passing an exam, That's a very, very different approach to their work than if students are learning their work for the purpose of keeping patients safe, of making good clinical decisions, of interacting well with the team. So the purpose of why you're doing something does make a difference in how you engage with it. And then the R of the CPR, easy to guess, I guess, if we're talking in this space, and that is resilience. And that's why all the balls are bouncing back, because the definition of resilience is to be able to bounce back from adversity and to continue to give energy and effort into a specific endeavor. So we think about people like Sheryl Sandberg with her lean in, the kinds of things that happen to people that really are very, very adverse, and yet they are able to continue, even if it's not in the same way, but to continue in a way that allows them a meaningful life. With resilience, we speak about bouncing back from adversity, but also the crisis, as I said, if you're looking for a stimulus to change, if there has been some sort of crisis, you can often bounce back even higher than your previous highest output, because things like crises can alert you to your purpose. So why are you doing this? What is your reason for being here and doing the things you do? And when you've got that more firm purpose, so then you're able to give much more to the endeavor that you're involved in. And that would be even more than resilience. It's like post-traumatic growth in a way, rather than post-traumatic stress or distress. So this is the approach that I'd like you to hold in your heads when we start talking about mindsets. Could you change? What is your purpose in the learning or in the teaching that you're doing? And what is it about resilience that allows us this growth, that allows us to think about how mindsets could be? Okay, so when I shared my slides, Christine, it did not give me the opportunity to say I'm going to share sound. So I'm going to quickly just try the video to see if you're not, to see if you can hear something. If you're not hearing something, please shout out and then I will try and fix it from my end.
We're not hearing it.
Okay, so because you're not sharing it, let me find where you are, first of all, as the meeting, which is here, and I'm going to stop sharing. And when I share content, yeah,
Shira, if you give me the link, I can also try sharing it for you. I have the button that says include computer sound.
Oh, okay. So, you know, that's really interesting because I think even though you added me as a presenter, it's not enjoying, sorry, excuse me. It's not enjoying the fact that that I didn't set up the meeting. Okay, so, oops. Let me just get that link for you and let's see if you can share it for me. And then what I'll do while we're in the middle of the meeting is I'll give you the next link as well. And then if we reach the stage where we want to talk about it, then I'll ask you to play it too. So if you just hold on another mo, let's do that and go back to the meeting. Oh, that's so interesting. Because now that I've put it in the chat, it says, do you want to share this in the meeting? Maybe we can. So Jennifer, let me get back to you in the chat first. Yeah, the issue about mindfulness meditation is that it it was associated in the 60s and 70s with a very Buddhist approach. And as you say, perhaps a very religious, which then speaks to, appreciation of a higher power kind of approach. But in medicalizing it, so Kabat-Zinn tried very hard to move away from that and just to focus on the neuroscience of meditation, which I think has made it easier for people to come into it without feeling like that it's a cultish way of behavior or that there are religious overtones, particularly in this day and age. So it's just an interesting idea that you can decouple the two. And build that awareness, thinking about things. Now, I'm going to ask Christine in a minute to show the video of Carol Dweck. Two things about Dweck. She is, of course, can we be non-judgmental and call her the father of mindfulness, the originator of the mindfulness theory? She speaks very slowly and very boringly. So you'll find lots of YouTubes on her on the internet. I chose a very short one. And let's have a look at what she says, and then we'll start trying to integrate it, think about it from our perspective. She, of course, dealt in the beginning with children, and then it segued through into the mainstream kind of world of work. All right, Christine, do you want to go ahead and see if you can play it with sound?
We took fifth graders. We give them puzzles to solve.
So you see these blocks? Can you tell me what color is on that side?
Red, yellow, white, blue.
All right, so what I want you to do is put these blocks together so that the picture on top matches the picture here, okay?
First, we give children a set of easier puzzles to do.
Now here's the next one.
When these 9 and 10-year-olds successfully put together the puzzle, the children are praised for either their intelligence,
Wow, you did really well. You must be really smart at these.
or the effort they made.
Wow, you did really well. You must have tried really hard at these.
Then we give them a much harder set of problems, ones that they might, in fact, struggle with.
Here's the next one.
And we see what happens to their confidence. Do they think, oh, this means I'm not good at it after all? Do they stop liking the puzzles? Or do they maintain their confidence and think, well, it just needs more effort or strategy? What happens to their motivation?
You ready to go on?
Ta-da! We also ask them, well, which problems do you want to work on some more? Those easier ones or those harder ones? And generally we find that kids who have been praised for their intelligence really want to go back to those easier ones that were their claim to fame.
This is a sign of a fixed mindset, the belief that intelligence is innate and can't be changed.
What we found was that children thought that difficulty meant they weren't smart or they weren't good at the task.
So you seem to have more trouble with this one, and I want to know why you think that was.
Probably because I'm not good at these problems.
A very discouraging conclusion.
Other children show a growth mindset.
The growth mindset is like this. No matter who you are, you can always become a great deal smarter. They feel smart when they're working really hard on something difficult and making progress.
So if I gave you some more problems, would you like more problems like these that are pretty easy so you'll do well, or problems like these that'll be hard but you might learn a lot from them?
These.
More like these?
Students praised for effort generally want those hard ones that they can learn from. What I've learned from my research is that kids, and I think adults too, are exquisitely sensitive to what's going on in a situation, what other people value, what they're being judged on. What is that voice in our head saying? Is it saying fixed mindset things like, oh, you better not make a mistake, you better look smart, people are judging you? Or is it saying growth mindset thing? Here's an opportunity. Here's a mistake I can learn from. I feel smart when I do something difficult.
Love that. We did
This
it.
video, I'm gonna.
Okay, can you stop it now, Christine? Thank you. That's very cool. So now while I'm in the main screen with all of you, I want to know, and you can either open your mic and talk to me or drop a comment in the chat. If you think that the way that we teach our students at the moment encourages one or other mindset, or if it's entirely up to them as to how they approach their studies and how we approach our teaching. Do I have anybody willing to weigh in on that really difficult question? Okay, we can leave it for a little. Craig, go ahead.
I think we prime the students on how to learn by the way we teach and the way we set up our assignments. And I think if we get that pattern of way that we assess them, they kind of fall into the pattern of learning that way.
Yes, so I think you are right. And I think that the problem with that is we then deal with them as they want to be dealt with, as it were. And so we're letting them dictate what their responses are. So if we, in a pictorial sense, look at what the video was telling us, it's the concept that a fixed mindset is somebody who believes that they either have it or they don't. Okay, that what they've got is what they've got, and they can't do anything else with it. Versus the idea that you can grow and develop as you move through an experience. And so, in terms of performance, if we give either of those students a kind of test, they want to do what's brought them success in the past. So all of those students who were top of their class all the way through primary school and high school and were head girls and boys and captains of the sports teams and all of those kind of high achieving children like to look smart because that's what their achievement has led them to believe that they do. And because of that, how do they then behave? So growth mindset and the way that she describes it, Dweck, is about your approach in 5 different arenas. And the first one is, what is this person's approach to a challenge? And by a challenge, we're talking now government speak. So anything that needs to be done that might be difficult. So it might be slightly outside of your current capacity. Or it might be a huge volume of something to do. Or it might be, a course of study to go through. So people with a fixed mindset who want to look smart don't want to do the challenging things. They want to do the easy things, and they want it to be easy so that they can succeed because they've been led to believe that their capacity is what allows them to succeed. I mean, we all have to face everybody's been born differently. Everybody has different skills. So those that are praised for the skills that bring them success only want to do that thing. And here you see it, for example, in the students who've had success by learning things off by heart. So if that's their brain skill and that's their particular capacity, any kind of test that allows them to learn off by heart makes them feel smart because they can do it and they know they can do it. Whereas there are all these tests where you have to think things through and make judgments and add a whole lot of stuff that is not off by heart knowledge, and they don't like those tests because that's not the arena that they've had success in before. And if we think about embracing challenge, so here we speak about places where people really can put in the effort. So maybe in the chat, I'd be interested to know, in your course that you currently teach, what kind of challenges do you give your students? And how do they go about embracing them? So for example, if you're teaching clinical skills, one of the ways that you can see that a student has embraced challenge is if they practice, if they work through that concept of deliberate practice over and over to learn the skill, but ask for feedback and try and correct their technique on the basis of that feedback. So that is embracing the challenge, rather than the student who stands at the back of the group and actually doesn't want to demonstrate, doesn't want to get involved, doesn't want to roll up their sleeves. So I'm interested to know, in your arena where you're currently working, if you can see the difference between the students who embrace the challenge and the students who avoid it. Yeah, so Jennifer, you say if you've got students in a small group, then there's some who will engage and some who try and work things out and others who don't. You're quite right. Others who hold back. Yeah, Christina, and you're quite right. So when you give a quiz that's ungraded, but with feedback on it, then students can see where they know things or where they don't, and then they can go back and they can practice some more.
Mervyn has his hand up.
Okay, thank you for telling me. I can't see the screen, so most appreciated. Mervyn, do you want to share with us?
I want to go back to your original comments about the attitudes of students, and I'm talking from our particular perspective, in terms of their mindset regarding their exams. And you made a very valid point as to the mindset that we have to pass exams, as opposed to the mindset that we have to become good practitioners. So straight away, we are dealing with students who have a singular focus, and each of them has a different attitude to how they deal with that focus. But we're trying to change the focus. How do we do this?
Yeah, that is a major challenge. And that's something maybe we're going to work on over the next 2 or 3 weeks, is looking at actual activities that can help them in deciding what their actual purpose is and why they're doing what they're doing and what they can do to improve. If we look at Dweck's concept of fixed versus growth mindset, she does look at it, I said, in 5 ways. So we had the 3 before, now we're going to do the 5. People with a growth mindset, she says, persist in the face of setbacks, whereas those with a fixed mindset give up easily in the face of obstacles. And what kind of obstacles? I mean, if you go for a job interview and you don't get the job, okay, does that mean you're going to stay unemployed for the rest of your life? You're just going to sit on the couch and cry? And there might be external influences that are pushing you towards a certain behavior. But there is the group of people who say, oh, I just can't do maths. Or, yeah, I wanted to learn how to drive, but I failed the test twice, so now I'm not going to try again. I'm using examples, kind of real life examples, but that are a bit ridiculous because the obstacles that we face are those that are accepted kind of in everyday parlance as being challenging. Okay, but even in the face of being challenged, there are things that stop you from progressing. And at that first obstacle, do you give up? So not only have you avoided the challenge, but when you've been goaded into it and you have to do it, then at the first obstacle, if you give up, it shuts off that avenue for you. So if you wanted to be a filmmaker and the first video that you shot on your phone wasn't regarded highly, then you don't sign up for filmmaking school because you think that you're not good enough. And then, of course, you aren't ever going to be a real filmmaker because you don't learn how to do it because you thought that you weren't good at it. Yeah, so developing resilience in the face of obstacles, so persisting, is important. If we look at the amount of effort that you put into something, so this speaks to a whole lot of other motivational psychology people like Angela Duckworth, who wrote a book called Grit. What is grit, and do we have it, and do our students not have it? What is it about using effort and putting huge amounts of effort into something, but meaningful effort? Because I know from counseling many students that some of them really do put in effort, but they're not putting effort in the right direction. So they don't understand what their purpose is, and they might be learning something completely off by heart and taking hours and hours to do it, but that's not the kind of learning that we want. We want them to perhaps perform a skill or something like that. So it's about targeted effort. Putting effort in as part of the path to mastery, so that implies that you can actually see the path, that knowing that if you work in this direction, you are going to get results, rather than thinking, oh, I just can't be bothered. This obstacle is in my way and I can't put the energy and effort in because it's not going to work. Or even if I put the effort in, I'm not going to succeed. So I'm not going to waste the time. So the approach to effort is something that she thinks is key in looking at the type of mindset that we have. This is a tough one, and I'll see it as a point to stop and think about what we do. So if you look at a fixed mindset, they see criticism as negative, okay, always. Whereas those with a growth mindset will see criticism as an opportunity to learn. So any kind of critique, and we all know the sinking feeling when you've sent off a paper to be reviewed and the reviewer hasn't read it nicely and says all sorts of weird things back at you, like this doesn't speak to, you haven't done the methods right, or you've left out this concept when in actual fact you hadn't, it's right there. Yeah, so how we approach criticism as an opportunity to learn, I think, is important. And I'm interested to see, I see Jennifer, you said in the chat that online it's hard to see if people are engaged or not, and that's true. And then Yasmin, is the difference between a fixed and a growth mindset a definite? So yeah, to think that there is an in-between mindset, a student who flourishes on the clinical platform can have difficulty with theory. Yeah, it's not about success or failure, Yasmin. It's about how they approach their studies. And we all can have multiple mindsets over many things every day. So if we look at the different facets of our lives, like relationships, either at work or at home, our financial management, our health and how we approach our health. I'm thinking what the T is. There are 4 of them. Oh, time management. Yeah. Okay. So the ways that we approach our lives, we can have a fixed or a growth mindset for different opportunities and times. And not only that, it's not determined. You can't say you are a fixed mindset person because that's as bad as saying your intelligence is static. We oscillate between growth and fixed mindsets. We oscillate between these 5 things that she speaks about. However, if you have a look, that this infographic has been designed quite sweetly. If you have a look at the green side, which is the growth mindset, they're trying to imply neuronal plasticity. Can you see that the signal gets thicker every time you do a growth mindset thing? So what they're saying is the more you respond in a growth mindset way to anything, the more you will respond in a growth mindset way. So you can definitely train yourself away from fixed mindset thinking in any situation towards a more growth mindset approach. And as I say, the reason for discussing mindfulness is to be able to catch yourself thinking a certain way and change that thinking so as to develop the growth mindset ideal, as it were. Let's look at her number 5. This is Dweck still. People with a fixed mindset often feel threatened by the success of others. Somebody else got the promotion, that means I'm not good enough. Or somebody else's idea was taken and mine therefore isn't as good as that person's. Compared with finding lessons and inspiration in the success of others. And in our particular environment, mine specifically, I take great vicarious joy in the success of others because it means that the things that they've learned with us are things that are empowering them in their selves and their careers. And I feel that that reflects back on us and our ability to think and behave in a certain way. So this is the classic infographic that is given for Dweck's work. She, in her book, unpacks these 5 ways of determining if somebody is thinking in a fixed mindset way or a growth mindset way, and then unpacks the idea that, of course, we can move from one to the other. So I do think, whoops, that I'm going to now, oops, hang on a sec, that's not working for you, it's going to work for me. I'm going to give you an example. So although we do have students and engagement in work, this again is a child. There are a whole lot of things wrong with making a little boy learn something off by heart and say something, uh, but listen to him and try and relate that to our students' thinking. I think he's closer to them than we are in a way. So, Christine, I don't know if you want to try and play this one as well.
Just to confirm, this is the right video.
Yes, it is. There are, of course, a million TED videos on growth mindset.
Michael Jordan has said, I've missed more than 9,000 shots, lost almost 300 games, and 26 times I've been trusted to make the game-winning shot and missed. I fail over and over and over again, and that is why I succeed. Michael Jordan is one of the most famous basketball players in the world, though he was not always a star. He didn't make his high school basketball team because he was too short and wasn't good enough. He could have quit, but instead he had the mindset to continue and get better. He was practicing each day before most people were even out of bed. And because of this, he not only made the team the following year, but he went on to become the greatest player of all time and a true champion. The question that comes to our mind is, can we all learn to have a mindset of a champion? A mindset is a word describing how we think. There are 2 types of mindsets. 1, a growth mindset, and 2, a fixed mindset. A growth mindset is when somebody believes they can learn to be good and they can learn to get better. They are not afraid of challenges. They continue when things get hard. They know that they have put effort into learn and they learn from criticism. They are also inspired by people who do well. Michael Jordan has this trait, though another person with a growth mindset is The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. He was cut from the Canadian Football League early on in his career. He could have quit, but instead he worked very hard, faced many challenges, and is now a super famous movie star, one of my favorite. Did you know that coaches and professional scouts look for athletes who don't just have skill? They want someone who wants to learn, who is coachable, and will give 100% effort in their practices. They want someone with a growth mindset. What they don't want is somebody who thinks they are already good enough, they don't need to learn, and are not coachable. These people have a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset is the opposite of a growth. These people either think they're born good or born not so good. They cannot learn. They are afraid of challenges. They give up and get defensive easily. They feel criticized when given feedback and are threatened by people who do well. Which mindset do you think I have? Well, let me tell you a story. Reading has always been hard for me, and even now I still find it challenging. From kindergarten to fourth grade, I was always a bit below grade level in reading. So each night, I read aloud to my parents to try to get better. This was always the worst part of my day. Whenever I was reading, I would of course make mistakes, misread words, say words that weren't there, miss words that were there, and miss punctuation. Normal. Whenever my mom or dad tried to correct me, I'd get upset. I told them that they were wrong and sometimes even have a meltdown. This happened from my friends and teachers and with other subjects and activities too. I thought that I should know how to do everything already, and if I didn't, I would get upset. I thought that what my teachers were teaching should come to me easy. Well, guess what? Some of the things I was learning or reading were not easy. I would get upset. Negative thoughts came into my mind. You suck. You can't do anything. This should be so easy. Suddenly, I felt tears coming down my face in front of my friends and teachers too. In my head, and saying, no, 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 please, no. I could no longer control my emotions. This is where the real problem begins. You see, I lose control of my emotions, I stop listening, and I stop thinking. I become difficult to those around me. And when I finally get through it, I'm very tired. This is not healthy and it's not the person I want to be. I want to know why I was feeling this way and why my emotions were so strong. Well, this year, in fifth grade, was the first year I was able to answer these questions. I learned what a growth and fixed mindset are. I'm learning how to change my fixed mindset into a growth mindset and have a mindset of a champion. I believe we can have both of these mindsets, a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. I believe this because I have both. I have a growth mindset with things like soccer, basketball, change, and learning new languages. I also believe we can change our fixed mindset into a growth mindset and have a mindset of a champion. Well, maybe not a champion like Michael Jordan, but a champion in our own way. We may just need a little help to do this. My dad and I read this book called Mindsets, written by Carol Dweck. Carol Dweck is a professor and professional psychologist who researched and came up with the idea of a growth and fixed mindset. Her book told me that I was not the only one as a fixed mindset from time to time. However, the best advice I ever got was from my teacher and school counselor. Their advice was a one little three-letter word. This word was yet. They told me always put the word yet at the end of my sentence. I can't do it. I can't do it yet. I don't understand. I don't understand yet. The word yet makes me feel I just need to put a little more effort in before I understand it. I still struggle with a fixed mindset from time to time. However, now know why I get frustrated and upset. For any of you out there who may have a fixed mindset from time to time, please know that I'm proof that you can beat it. Writing this talk, I struggled the whole time, though every day I've gotten a little better than the day before. This is why I can say I'm winning, because I'm here in front of you now today. Thank you.
Okay, Christine, thanks. You can shut him off. So that's really lovely because it gives us our first link into next week, thinking about what we can actually do to help people to develop a growth mindset and also institutionally to take the dipstick of our institutional culture with regard to mindset. And that relates to the word yet. Have we got there? Yet, which is very powerful. I do have to say that it's sometimes difficult to work with students who feel that they need to be there already. And we have that sometimes in our postgraduate diploma or also in our masters, where we have people who've really succeeded in their careers. They're full professors and they have great research careers, and they come back voluntarily to do a postgraduate diploma or a master's, and they feel like they should know this stuff. They feel like they really should be succeeding, where it's brand new work, it's completely outside of their actual speciality and their scope. And there's no real reason for them to be feeling like that. And sometimes they get very, very despondent because they feel like they're not going to rise to the challenge. And then on the other hand, you have the same class of person, the person who's developed a great expertise in another area, come in and approach it with an absolute challenge of, this is something I really want to come to grips with, and I'm just going to put in the energy, and I'm going to learn to think differently because that's why I'm here. So the idea that somebody hasn't got it yet is a pedagogical approach, and this is a parody because a whole lot of people say things like, oh, if you use technology in your teaching, wada. Technology is not a pedagogy. It's an assist to how you teach and the methods that you teach and what you learn. But the concept of yet is a pedagogical approach. It helps the student to understand where they are. So you haven't got competence yet. You cannot do the skill yet. And what's the thing that you have to then do? Well, the obstacle is you're not there yet. But the challenge is to put in the effort so that you eventually will get there. And then you've succeeded in one more thing towards your purpose and towards the goal that you want to achieve. So we're coming back to being able to change and developing your purpose. So the question for me is, why are both us and our students struggle with resilience and struggle with the idea that we can oscillate between a fixed and a growth mindset. And the more that we develop the growth mindset thinking, the more we'll get into it. I want to put up just a final exercise for this morning. This afternoon. You can tell where my brain is still. With some of the ways of thinking. And we're going to segue with both of these ideas into next week. So this is almost homework. For those who watch it as a recording, definitely homework. Looking at the growth mindset thinking. So instead of all of those negative comments was, it's too hard, I made a mistake, I can't do it. My plan A didn't work, my friend can do it, but I can't. I'm not good at this, I just give up. And I don't know how many times we hear that in the day with students who are struggling with whatever it is that we ask them to do, for example. So the segue is to shift to a different kind of thinking. Instead of, oh, I'm just not good at this, you can start breaking that down. What am I missing? Why am I not good at it? What is it that I need to change in order to be good at it? I can use a different strategy. I can always improve. This might take some time, but because it's not yet, then I have to persevere until I get it to yet. So my friend can do it and I will learn from them. It actually sounds quite easy when you see it on a table like this. But maybe in the chat, what you can do is drop for me a few comments on the kinds of fixed mindset thinking that you've heard in your students or that you actually feel yourself in relation to teaching the students. And the classic starts with, these students are not like we were when we were students. Yeah, Jennifer, the yet is really cool. And it actually works with anything because you just tag it on the end of whatever it is that they're really struggling with. So things that you've heard your students say. Or ways of being. I mean, we had the classic situation in pharmacology where the students were given an integrated exam, and yet the pharmacology lecturers always gave tons and tons and tons of work. It was probably almost the most work in the whole integrated course. And the students soon figured out that the number of questions was not commensurate with the work. And so instead of learning pharmacology, they left it out because then they could learn everything else much harder. And they knew that there weren't sufficient questions for them to fail if they left out all of the pharmacology. So that's a real fixed mindset approach to, to dealing with the issue of exams, etc. Yeah, Kennedy, I agree with you completely. I've heard that over and over. I just want to get that scraping pass and then move on and leave this disaster behind me or never engage with this thinking ever again. And in our context, that's really difficult because we're building towards an integrated whole practitioner. It's not about passing exams, as Mervyn pointed out right at the beginning. In what we said. It's about why you're doing it. So what is your purpose in this work? And just wanting to get 50% and move on somehow, yeah, doesn't give you the kind of thinking you're wanting. How would we change that? What could be a growth mindset comment on this? Yes. Oh, yes, Craig, exactly that. Which do I need to study for the exam? What's it going to be in? Yes. So Jennifer, you're exactly right. If we were looking at individualized pedagogies, they call it adaptive teaching, right? In our personal capacity, we can't do that with hundreds of students. We really can't. And maybe that's the place to say that technology can help us. Because as Christine mentioned earlier, if we put on online quizzes that they can engage in, that we're not going to have to mark, but that return feedback to the students, that helps them a bit. And then if we make those quizzes clever, and if students are getting things wrong from a specific area, we can then hyperlink them to the information on that area. Well, yeah, that certainly shows students that they're not there yet for that section and that they would need to spend more energy and effort with that material perhaps, or in learning it a different way. I do think that you're right. The ways at the moment that we structure our assessments don't lead students to a growth mindset, because a lot of it is about achieving in a fixed way and not allowing those students to show the strength of the effort that they've made in facing the challenge that we give them. And that's why a portfolio of learning is sometimes just it's very difficult for students to wrap their heads around, because in the portfolio it shows your approach to obstacles and is a good way of you showing the kinds of efforts that you've made. And um, students feel very uncomfortable with that because they don't know what the goalposts are, and they don't know how it is that we'll judge them for the kinds of work that they then hand in. It'll be useful, I think, for us in next week's session to think about ways that we can utilize the concept of growth mindset for the kinds of teaching and learning that we do in the faculty. I'm going to leave you with one last thought, and these are the words of Glenda Oyang, who visited us last in 2020. She's been a frequent visitor to South Africa and to the faculty, and she works in a company that deals with management of change. And these are the tools that we're going to need if we want to start developing students with a growth mindset. So for ourselves, and then to train the students in every situation, to turn the judgment that you're making into curiosity. So instead of making the negative comment, say, why is it that? And you ask the question relating to the fact. You can turn disagreement into a shared exploration. I can see why you think that. I see the reference that you're using for that, but I do know that there's a body of knowledge, for example, with these references that says something different. So how are we going to come to a common understanding rather than just saying you're wrong and I'm right, which can happen. For students and for ourselves, we can turn defensiveness into self-reflection. Instead of looking for reasons why you couldn't do something particularly or giving the excuses, you can turn it into a moment of saying, what would have helped me achieve this? Or how could I have done that better? Or is there another way that we could have designed this? So those are all more self-reflective than being defensive. And then lastly, back to the mindfulness, is look at our assumptions. What assumptions are we making? And can we turn them into questions? Instead of saying, these students have had no grounding in, which is an absolute assumption, we can say, who can tell me something about the topic that we're looking for, or the basic chemistry that you're looking for in integrating the explanation you're giving, etc., etc. So rather than just assuming, ask the questions, find out from them, make them human, and let them see us as human. And I think that those go a long way towards helping us determine how it is that we help students think. All right, I'm looking at your comment, Christine. Yeah. Exactly. So implementing feedback is probably one of the key things in helping students to develop a growth mindset. So quickly in the chat before you go off, 1 or 2 words I want you to leave for me today on what you feel was the most important concept that we spoke about today. We spoke about mindfulness, change, purpose, resilience, and then growth and fixed mindsets in relation to challenges and effort and criticism, approach to criticism, and learning from others. Tell me which one resonated for you loudest of all. Yes, Craig, indeed. Seeing it as a challenge, taking it on. Because so many people see the challenge and go, no, I'm not ready to do that. And if they say, I'm not ready to do that yet, that's okay. But if they say, I'm avoiding that because I just don't want to do it, that leaves us, in the wind. So there are concepts of growth and fixed mindsets and how to oscillate, I think. Yeah. Yes, Jennifer, that's my byword. Add yet. It is such a different change in how you teach students also, because instead of getting frustrated and going, I just don't know why they're not getting this, and it's clear they're not getting it, we can say they're not there yet. So how is it we can design so that we can help them to get there? Sorry, I don't want to cough down the line for you. Anybody else want to add in? Yeah. Christine, I think purpose is really important. So putting the focused effort, knowing your purpose. Why are we here? Those whys are important. So thanks for coming along, everybody. I really appreciate the interest in a topic like this. In the next session, we're going to cover, it's going to be much more active. So we're going to look at ways of helping students develop growth mindset and also helping ourselves in terms of shifting towards a growth mindset, bearing in mind that the more growth mindset type thinking that you have, the more it encourages growth mindset thinking. That's just how our brains work. So you can start thinking about it during the course of the week, and we'll pick this up again next Tuesday. Thanks for coming, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon.